Last night, if you were watching the special that we did on gbtv.com, you saw that I told you that we were optioning different books. And if could we bring Chris Stewart up, will you? Chris?
Hey, good morning, Glenn.
May I just make an offer of, I don't know, whatever it is, to option your book, The 7 Tipping Points? I think this is the best history book that I've read in a long, long, long time.
Oh, well, you're very kind. Thank you.
No, you're an amazing writer. Now, which one, is it you or is it your brother that is the actual writer?
It actually is a collaborative effort. It's pretty much 50-50. I mean, my brother's a brilliant researcher and a great writer as well, but I think it really is kind of a 50-50 deal.
This book is called The Miracle of Freedom, The 7 Tipping Points That Saved the World. In a nutshell, tell the story.
Well, it's a book about a couple things. One, it's a book about freedom. It's also a book about world history and how rare in world history freedom really is. It answers the question, I think, where does freedom come from? And, we look around at the world around us and we think, well, this is the natural state of affairs. The world is free. Most people live and have the great blessings of freedom. But the truth is that a tiny, tiny percentage of people who have lived in this world throughout all human history have had, any concept or any hope at all of ever having the blessings that, we take for granted almost every day now.
Right, and when we're talking about what the rest of the world lived under, we're not talking about, they lived under, Canada-style freedom. We may what we mean is no freedom. I mean, tyranny beyond your wildest imagination, where you could just be sold into slavery because you were conquered.
Yeah, I mean, that was the natural order of man. It is slavery and tyranny and oppression such that we really don't appreciate. And you look at any of these great civilizations, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, even the ancient Greeks, we give them the benefit of these were progressive people. These were people who, first experimented with this idea of democracy, of a republic. And yet at the same time in their culture, infanticide was fairly common. They just simply didn't value human life the same way that we do, and yet this was a very progressive culture for its day.
Well, usually progressives don't value human life, but that's another story for another book.
Yeah.
Chris, the 7 tipping points, just go over the highlights of what they are, because your contention here is that there were 7 moments where freedom could have been lost entirely, and we would have never seen what we have.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these were literally tipping points. They were points in world history where the outcome was not assured, when we could have gone in a very different direction. And had these events not played out as they did, then we wouldn't have this golden age of freedom, these miracle of freedom that we see around us today. And it's not something that happened at one moment and then it was crystallized, and from that moment on it was guaranteed that we would find ourselves in this situation. And it played out very slowly over thousands of years of time. The first one we talk about is the defeat of the Assyrians as they sought to destroy the kingdom of Judah. Several hundred years later there were the Greeks and the Persians at Thermopylae and Salamis, and that's one of the great stories of world history.
It's so well. I mean, I'm not blowing smoke, Chris. It is, you tell the story the way history should be told. This is a history book that should be in every classroom. It tells the story. Your kids. I'm up late. I was up at 1 o'clock last night reading it. Your kids will read this. Your sons will read these stories. They're fantastically told.
Well, again, Glenn, I blush. I'm blushing. What's something kind of fun? I've written, 14 or 15 books, and with my own kids, sometimes I can beat them into reading them, and they'll humor me and work their way through them. But this was kind of a nice moment for me, because I gave it to my wife and my children, and to see their reaction was really just encouraging, because they weren't reading it because Dad was making them. I think it really kind of captured them, and as you said, it kind of tells the story in a way that's and these stories are so compelling anyway. They're so interesting. I mean, out of the whole world history, we've selected 7 of them, and these are very compelling events on their own.
Okay, so you have 2 Gods at War, How the Greeks Saved the West, The Miracle at the Bridge, The Battle that Preserved Christian Europe, The Mongol Horde Turns Back Time, How the New World Saved the Old, and the Battle of Britain. What is your favorite one?
Oh, I hate that question. You know, I was an Air Force pilot for 14 years, so yeah, I love the flying ones, and of course that's a Battle of Britain. But I love it for another reason, and that is it's a little bit like the 300 with the Greeks and the Persians. This is a time in history where a few hundred men, and some of them were just frighteningly young. They were 17 years old, many of them, who had the courage to stand up against the fearsome Luftwaffe, the great German war machine, against overwhelming odds, and yet they did that, and it certainly changed the outcome of the war, which by extension changed the outcome of the world as it would develop after that. So I kind of like the Battle of Britain, but I also got to go back to, again, the defeat of the Assyrians, the first story that we tell, because it just shows how important it was that the kingdom of Judah be preserved so that there was this seedbed for Christian thought, Judeo-Christian thought to take place.
And the miracle that happened, I mean, if that's not the finger of God, I don't know what. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to ruin, that, but I mean, it's a phenomenal story. And
even told from the Assyrian historians, they account it as a miracle. It's something they can't explain why they walked away from the walls of Jerusalem like they did.
The 7 tipping points that saved the world. Chris, I contend that we are at the 8th. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Any idea how this one comes out? Or what's required for this one to be a tipping point towards freedom?
Well, I think the answer to that is, and let me congratulate and thank you for a couple things. One of them being your stand for Israel, and I think that's a great example of what's required. And you've been talking about this, Glenn. I mean, a lot of us have been saying that to each other for several years, and you articulate it better than we do. But these things don't take place just passively. They take place because people stand together, because they don't lose their faith. And this book is a book of hope. It is a book of faith. It brings out to the idea that we have reason to have great hope in our future. Yeah. But we have to stand together, and we have to do as other people have done in the past. We have to be willing to pay the price.
All right. Chris Stewart, you may recognize his name if you ever picked up the 7 Miracles That Saved America, why they matter and why we should have hope. This book is called A Miracle of Freedom, The 7 Tipping Points That Saved the World. Unbelievable. You can go to Amazon and get this book if you want. It's out. It's brand new. You'll love it. If you didn't read the first one, we've put both of them together, and they're available at markdown.com, and they're 50% off today. There's only a limited number here, but I'm telling you, every library in America should have this history book in it. It is the 7 tipping points that save the world, and it is absolutely remarkable. It's a history book that you will read, as I am, in the middle of the night and not be able to put it down. I mean, I've been waking up in the last few days with my glasses halfway off my face and the light still on at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've fallen asleep reading it every night. I can't turn my light off at night because I love this book. Grab it at Amazon or wherever books are sold, or you can get it at Markdown for 50% off now at markdown.com. Chris, best of luck, my friend.
Sir, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
You bet. Bye-bye. Guy is an unbelievable writer. Unbelievable writer. Stu, you'd really love this book.
Really?
You should read this book.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting.
Really well written. Every history book should be written like this. Every history book.